Conflict strategies. I've got some conflict strategies for you. And then that pause model, which is really, really important if you're caught in the middle of a conflict without having time to prepare for it, okay? So, number one, conflict strategy, acknowledgement, okay? Now this is part of pause as well, but a lot of conflicts happen because people don't feel that their thoughts have been acknowledged, okay? So people often get into a conflict mode because they're vying for attention. They want you to know, they want you to tell them that they've heard you. If that makes sense, it was a bit of a garbled way of saying it, wasn't it? They want to be heard, they're vying. It's like children. My children do it, my 5 and 6 year old. So 6 and 7 they are now. If one of them's talking, the other one will want to talk. Yeah? And if I just hold them, it's so you can see them getting more annoyed. Whereas they probably weren't going to talk anyway, but the other one's talking. And it's about that acknowledgement. So when there is a conflict situation, one of the first things you can do is acknowledge those people. Acknowledge it. Okay, yeah, got it. Right, I can hear what you're saying. Yeah? So just acknowledge that and define what it is specifically that's moving them into fight. Yeah? And you might have to do a little bit of research for this as well, which is an understanding. We'll get onto that in a moment, okay? Don't freeze or procrastinate. Sometimes that happens in conflict management. So I've talked to you about fight and I've talked to you about flight. If in a conflict situation somebody's going to fight, they have a load of adrenaline and they're majorly defensive and they're ready to go at you. If somebody flights, then they'll just keep nodding at you as long as you keep them there, and then they want to run off because that's an exit, okay? But sometimes people just freeze and you can't get anything out of them. It's like trying to get blood out of a stone. You kind of want to shake them up and go, come on, say something. But the fact that they're not saying anything is it's almost like they've been paralysed in the conflict. Okay? And we need to watch out for that because it causes procrastination and it means the problem doesn't get resolved quickly. It just gets left. And it goes on and on and on and on until it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And then something explodes and then people go and try and fix it. So just watch out for that procrastination phase, that zone. Yeah, again, you need to notice it and then get yourself out of it. Yeah. You need to also acknowledge concerns. So there might be a problem, but now there's concerns around the problem which is causing the conflict as well. So, you know, there is people and process in this. So when you're acknowledging a conflict, acknowledge the process, the thing that's gone wrong, and the opinions of the people that are making the conflict. So always process and people, not just process, okay? That's in there. And also their needs, that will also come through as well. So number one is make sure in any conflict there is acknowledgement of the conflict, because without that people will keep getting more angry, more defensive, and they're vying for your attention at that point, okay? Number two, ground rules. If you are going, and you can plan, if you know there's going to be a conflict situation and you can plan for it, before you actually get into the conflict, put some ground rules in place for the conflict. Now, this is of course if you can plan for it, okay? I know you can't do this when it just happens, but just for a moment, this is if you can plan for it, okay? So put some ground rules in. Who's going to speak? Maybe if there's more than two of you, even better, there's a chairperson. Yeah, and they act as a bit of a mediator. So when somebody's speaking, nobody interrupts. Yeah, because if they're speaking and you interrupt, it's almost like you're going to make it worse. They're going to get more angry. So let them speak, let them have their say, then it moves over. I've even done this in real life sessions where somebody's had the pen. If you've got the pen, you can talk. If you haven't got the pen, you can't talk. If that's what it takes to shut everybody up and deal with the conflict, if you want the pen, you need to ask for the pen. Otherwise, if you haven't got the pen, don't talk. If you have got the pen, talk. Okay? So if you can put some ground rules in place, let people say what they need to say, it helps get it out, makes people feel better straight away. Respect other people's opinions. They may not be your opinions. Yeah? Some people are hell-bent on turning the world to their opinions. You know? Sometimes people say that of me. I teach, look at the energy and passion I put into all this stuff. I so wholeheartedly believe in this stuff. And so when somebody's got a different opinion to me, sometimes I kind of go, don't think you're right. Yeah? But I hopefully wouldn't try and go and then continue to push it down their throat if they just had a different opinion to me. That's okay. That's all right. You've got a different filing cabinet. I've got a different filing cabinet, different of opinion. Do you know what though? If you've got a level of trust with that person, different opinions is okay. It's all good. No problem. Happy days. On the back of it, yeah? So again, it comes back to that relationship building as well. Respect each other's opinion. Address the issue, not the person. But you have got to address the people and the process and the people. So let me just, I'm contradicting myself here, but I'm doing it for a reason. So address the fact, address actually what's gone wrong, and then address how people are feeling on the back of it, okay? Don't just start addressing, well, you're just saying that because you're in a bad mood. Does that make sense? Yeah. So what's gone wrong? What's causing the conflict? Let's do some root cause analysis and find out what's causing the conflict, and also why would you say it the way you've said it? Why have you come from? Why has it annoyed you so much? And so on and so on and so on. Okay. So that's number 2. Have ground rules. Okay. Number 3. Find some common ground. You can see here the old little picture. Two opinions overlapping. Find some common ground. It's one of the first things a negotiator or influencer would want to do in a conflict situation. What's the common ground? What can we find out that's common between the two people that are in the conflict? Because that's the first step. If you can find there's some common ground, and in business, there should be one very simple common ground. Okay? And the common ground should be, whatever the conflict is about, you're both there to do the best you possibly can for your organization and your customers. That's your common ground, okay? So when you do that, it affects this over here, and when you do that, it affects this over here. Okay, what's the common ground? We both want the best for the organization. We both want the best for the customers. So which way do we need to go about fixing this? Yeah, so find that common ground, yeah? Look for areas of agreement before you get into the conflict first, okay? Find some common ground and then tackle the conflict, like I've said there, yeah? Then we move on to number 4, which is opinions, okay? Welcome different opinions. Now this is a mindset, okay? It's something I've had to learn to do, in all honesty. My high red, quite often, with my ego, thinks my opinion is the right opinion. And that's the way it should be in the world. Some of the time that's right, and some of the time it's not, okay? And I think over time, I welcome other people's opinion now and go, okay, I'll tell you what, let's get other people's opinion first. That's going to give me some competence, it's going to give me some understanding, it's going to give me more confidence, and all the other stuff that we talked about earlier. And then I could probably make a more informed decision. So, this is about, your opinion will be different to other people, that's okay. That's okay. If you find some people that have got opinions the same as you, well, that's all right as well. Yeah, but there might be a difference of opinion. So if we welcome different opinions, then we learn more. We don't always agree with different opinions, but it's still good to welcome them. So what do you think? Yeah, how would you tackle it? What do you think you would do to avert this conflict in the future? Rather than, well, I'll tell you what we need to do that and sort it out and then it won't happen again. Yeah? So again, it's about asking questions maybe rather than telling, if you're in a situation, yeah? And you could argue that everybody is always right. Because in their own little head, for whatever reason, they will think they're right. Okay? Whatever that is based on, and the psychological bump behind it is beside the point. Most people, 99% of the time, do something and think they're right. Until hindsight sets in, and then they think they might have done it in a better way. So if everybody's walking around thinking they're right, no wonder there is some conflict on the planet. But it's good to welcome those opinions, okay? And finally, the last one to finish off, which is a tool. So all of those tools, 1 to 4, and the resilient stuff, you can do all of that if you know there's a conflict coming up, can't you? You can try and find some ground rules. You can try and find some common ground. You can make sure you're dealing with the fact and not just the person. You can try and do some analysis of why the conflict has arisen. You can do all of that prior to having a conversation where the conflict is going to arise. However, you might be in a conversation and all of a sudden you find yourself in an argument. Okay, so conflict has come up. Some people have seen me use this model before. I think I used it back with handling difficult conversations, which is what it was designed for, along with conflict resolution. Two very similar courses, handling difficult conversations, albeit there's more to that. And then resolve conflict resolution. So, if you find yourself in a situation, all of a sudden there's an argument breaking out, there's a difference of opinion, you can feel a load of adrenaline going into your system to either fight or try to get away from the situation. What this little acronym, this little model does, is it gives you a get out. Okay? It gives you a way of trying to deal with the conflict and also deal with your emotions at the time, because you're getting angry, annoyed, fed up, worried, stressed, whichever way it's coming out. So if you ever find yourself in that position, the first thing you need to do, you'll notice when we finish this, it spells pause, because the P there stands for pause. So the first thing in any conflict situation is for you to do nothing, for you to pause. And the scientific reason for that is very simple. When you're under threat, adrenaline starts pumping around your system for fight or flight. If you pause for a moment, it stops the adrenaline release, and it just lets whatever adrenaline in your system you've got, it lets it start to dissipate in the system. In other words, just calms you down a little bit before you actually do anything else, okay? So the first thing we do in a conflict situation is pause. The next thing we do, we've talked about, is acknowledge what's happened, okay? So the first thing is, okay guys, just give me a second here, just give me a moment. Have a drink of water, just pause. Okay, so what's happened is this, and you're not happy about it because, is that correct? So you're acknowledging what has just happened, okay? Remember why people like to be acknowledged, otherwise they're vying for airtime, okay? Once you've acknowledged, you then seek to understand. Okay, let's understand. How did it arise? Why did it arise? What could we possibly do differently? What can we do to fix it now? So you seek to understand. If you try and understand somebody's problem, they will become more amicable with you. Once you've understood, you then seek to find a solution for the future. Because I see a lot of people do that, PAU, and then stop. So they understand the problem, but haven't fixed it, and don't put a solution in for the future. So then you find a solution, so it either fixes the problem, or it fixes the problem in the future, and finally, you execute the solution, not the person. And some people will be smiling there, but then you execute the solution. And again, I've seen people pause, acknowledge, understand the problem, come up with a solution, and then don't change anything, so 2 weeks later you have the same conflict. So the execution of the solution is just as important, okay? So, if you're in a conflict situation and you can prepare for it, there's loads of stuff I've given you today, from resilience all the way through to common ground, and so on and so on. If you're in a conflict situation that you find yourself in, pause, acknowledge, understand, seek to find a solution, and then execute the solution, and you won't have the conflict again going forward.